I am Luis Mendoza, a 62-year-old man of Mexican heritage forged in the fires of a lifetime of service. From the dusty streets of my childhood in Mexico City to the elite ranks of Delta Force, I've spent over 40 years defending what matters most: my country, my honor, and my family. Now, in what should have been my twilight years here, I was on my final deployment as a special advisor in the harsh sands of Afghanistan, staring out at the endless horizon from our forward operating base. In my hand, I clutched the letter that had arrived that morning 6 weeks into this tour. My wife Maria's words had grown shorter, colder with each passing deployment. This one just questions about bills and my exact return date. No, I miss you. No, I love you. Nothing that spoke of the bond we'd built over 35 years of marriage. Bad news from home, asked Sergeant Raul Torres, my closest friend since our Ranger School days back in the 80s. Raul, like me, carried the weight of our Mexican roots, family first loyalty above all. We'd survived countless missions together, brothers in arms. Maria's different, I replied, folding the letter and tucking it into my chest pocket. Something's off. She's been that way since I left. Raul clapped me on the shoulder, his voice steady as ever. All marriages hit rough patches, especially at our age, hermano. The long separations, the classified ops. You'll fix it when you get home. But my instincts, the same ones that had kept me alive through Vietnam, echoes Gulf War chaos and 2 previous tours in special ops, screamed that this was deeper. Maria had been my rock, the woman who stood by me through basic training, who raised our son, Carlos, while I was halfway around the world fighting shadows. She'd embraced my heritage, our shared values of familia and honor. What had changed? Before I could dwell on it, the warning came: incoming. Mortar fire exploded nearby, sending us diving for cover. The mission always came first. Personal demons would have to wait. But a shrapnel tore into my back that day, earning me another Purple Heart and a spinal injury that would sideline me for weeks. I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning back home. Before we continue this tale of betrayal and military vengeance, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from. Your support keeps these stories coming. 3 months later, I returned to Fort Bragg with that Purple Heart pinned to my chest and a spinal injury that demanded 6 weeks of physical therapy. Maria wasn't at the airfield to greet me. Instead, I hailed a taxi home to our modest ranch house on the outskirts of Fayetteville. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt wrong, heavy with absence. Her favorite throw pillows were gone from the couch in the hallway where our wedding photos and my family's Mexican heirlooms. Those old woven serapes from my abuela usually lined the walls, was stripped bare. I set my duffel bag down, my old combat senses firing like warning flares in the night. Maria emerged from the kitchen, startled, her eyes widening just a fraction. Her hair was styled differently, sleeker and more expensive looking, and she wore clothes I'd never seen, designer labels that screamed luxury. She didn't move to embrace me, didn't even step closer. "You're back early," she said, her tone flat, almost rehearsed. "Medical evac, took some shrapnel." I gestured to my aching back. "Nothing career-ending." She nodded, arms crossed tight across her chest like a shield. "We need to talk. I've interrogated hardened enemies in the shadows of war zones, navigated minefields under fire, survived ambushes that left brothers in arms bleeding out beside me. At 62, with echoes of Gulf War chaos and special ops tours etched into my bones, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal. But nothing prepared me for the knife she twisted next. "I want a divorce," Maria said, her voice steady but empty. "I've met someone else, someone who's actually here, not vanishing for months on end." The pain surged through me, sharper than the shrapnel still lodged near my spine. It wasn't just hurt, it was a tactical strike to my core. "Who is he?" "His name is Braden Mercer. He's a defense contractor. He gets me Luis, he's present." She looked away, avoiding my gaze. "The papers are on the counter. I'm staying at his place tonight to give you space." After she grabbed her bag and left the door clicking shut like a final salute, I found the divorce filings spread out like enemy intel. She wanted the house we'd built together, our savings from years of my deployments, and full guardianship of our 17-year-old son, Carlos, who was staying with her parents. Her justification hit like a gut punch. Father absent due to voluntary military service, unstable lifestyle, at age 62, with health issues unsuitable for guiding a young man's future, his education, his choices, his inheritance. That night, I called Carlos. His voice now deep and steady like a young man's on the cusp of adulthood, cut through the fog of betrayal. "Dad, what's going on? Mom says you're different now. When can I come home?" His confusion twisted the knife deeper, but it fueled me too. "Soon, mijo. Stay strong. We'll sort this." As I hung up, the betrayal crystallized into resolve. My military training surged back. Assess the threat, gather intel, strike precisely. I'd been ambushed on home soil, but Luis Mendoza had never surrendered in his life. This wasn't just a divorce. It was war. The next morning, I contacted Paul Garner, a former JAG officer turned civilian attorney, a man I trusted with classified briefs before. After reviewing the papers, he looked grim, leaning back in his chair. "She's got a shark for a lawyer. Brad Reynolds wins 90% of his cases, and the judge assigned Watkins typically favors mothers in guardianship battles, especially when age and health are painted as liabilities. At 62 with your injuries, they'll argue you're not fit to influence Carlos's path forward. I won't lose my son." I said, my voice low and unyielding, already mapping the battlefield in my mind. Garner leaned forward, eyeing me curiously. "What exactly did you do in Delta all those years? Your service records are more black ink than text." My expression hardened, a faint smile creeping in. "Nothing I can discuss openly, but I have skills and connections that go deep." Little did he know, the real counterstrike was already forming a strategic web of old allies and hidden intel. But how far would I have to dig to uncover the full extent of her deception? Over the next 2 weeks, I played the game by their rules, appearing to comply with every court requirement. I moved into a cramped apartment near the base, the kind with thin walls and fluorescent lights that hummed like distant artillery. Each mediation session, every financial disclosure I attended them, all my posture straight, my responses measured. But inside my mind was a war room, plotting moves 3 steps ahead, drawing on decades of strategic ops where patience meant survival. Meanwhile, Maria and Braden paraded their affair around town like a victory lap. I saw it on her social media posts of expensive dinners, weekend getaways to resorts I'd never taken her to. They drove matching luxury cars, gleaming symbols of betrayal funded by who knows what. It burned in my chest, that familiar rage from Gulf War ambushes, but I channeled it into focus. No rash strikes. This was about precision. After a grueling physical therapy session, my back screaming with every stretch, I spotted Braden in the parking lot, leaning against his sleek SUV like he owned the place. Younger, taller, dressed in tailored suits that reeked of unearned wealth, he approached with an outstretched hand, a smug grin plastered on his face. "No hard feelings, man. These things happen." I stared at his hand until he withdrew it, awkward and exposed. My senses sharpened the sweat on his brow, the faint tremor in his voice. He was probing for weakness. "I'm here because I care about Carlos," he continued, dropping my son's name like a weapon. "Maria says you're a good father, just unavailable, especially at your age. I want you to know I'll treat him well. Maybe guide him through college apps holidays. He's already starting to call me for advice." The words hit like a sniper round. Carlos, my boy, on the brink of manhood, influenced by this stranger. At 62, I'd taught him our Mexican roots, the value of honor and resilience lessons from my Delta days. Braden had known him for 3 months, and he was planning his future. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice low, controlled, leaning in just close enough to whisper, "A word of advice from the field: in combat, never reveal your position to the enemy." As I walked away, his faltering smile etched in my mind, my phone buzzed a message from Raul. "Package secured. Operation Homecoming is a get to him." The evidence from my old military network was in play. Threads of intel unraveling Braden's facade. But what secrets would it reveal, and how deep did the betrayal run? The temporary courtroom hummed with tension, the kind that builds like a storm on the horizon. For 3 hours, this preliminary divorce hearing had dragged on far from the straightforward affair it should have been. I sat at the defendant's table, my back throbbing from the injury, but my focus razor-sharp, every nerve attuned to the battlefield disguised as legal proceedings. Maria took the stand first, her voice confident, laced with rehearsed sympathy. "Your Honor, my husband has been physically present for less than half of our son's life due to his military commitments. At 62, with his recent injuries and a history of high-risk ops, he's unstable, unfit to guide Carlos through his final year of high school college applications, or even our family legacy. Carlos needs stability, someone who can be there for his future, not haunted by the past." Her lawyer, Reynolds, piled on. "Given Mr. Mendoza's age and potential for advisory redeployments, the child's best interests, his education, inheritance, emotional well-being, are served by remaining under his mother's guardianship." I remained silent, letting Garner handle the crossfire, my military posture unwavering. Inside, the betrayal festered, but I waited for my moment, the strategic pivot I'd planned with Raul's intel. As the judge tapped his pen, eyeing adjournment, I spoke for the first time. "I'd like to submit additional evidence regarding guardianship, Your Honor." Reynolds objected sharply. "This is irregular. All evidence should have been in discovery. This came into my possession yesterday," I replied calmly, approaching the bench with a sealed envelope. "It pertains to the safety and security of my son." Judge Watkins opened it, his face shifting from irritation to confusion, then stark alarm. He looked up, voice sharp. "Clear the courtroom now. Bailiff, secure the doors. No one leaves." As chaos erupted, he grabbed the phone. "This is Judge Watkins in courtroom 3B. I need military police here immediately. Security code Alpha 75. Maria's poise shattered. "Luis, what have you done?" Before I could respond, the doors swung open. 4 MPs entered, led by Colonel Wright from Army CID, his face stern as granite. "Mr. Braden Mercer, please stand." Braden rose from the gallery, pale and stumbling. "This must be a mistake." "No mistake," Wright barked. "You're detained on suspicion of espionage against the United States." As handcuffs clicked on Braden, Maria lunged toward me. "What is this? Some twisted revenge?" "Mrs. Mendoza," Wright interrupted, "you'll come with us for questioning." "This is insane," she shouted, another MP approaching. "Luis, tell them it's a mistake." I stood steady, my voice level. "No mistake, Maria. While I was taking fire in Afghanistan, your boyfriend was selling military intel to foreign operatives, intel that got 3 of my old teammates killed." Her face drained of color. "I didn't know." "That's what we'll determine," Wright said. The judge ordered the hearing continued in a secure facility. Alone with Garner and the judge afterward, Watkins demanded, "Explain this, Mendoza." I nodded, drawing on my Delta experience. "My unit tracked a leak for months. It led to a contractor at Meridian Defense, Braden Mercer. He used personal ties to access restricted info. Maria had access to my old mission journals per protocol. Whether she was complicit or a pawn, she enabled it. The web was unraveling my strategic strike landing, true. But as the investigation deepened, what more would surface about the woman I trusted for decades? Over the next 6 weeks, as my back slowly mended under the grind of therapy, I coordinated closely with Raul from my apartment, turning it into a makeshift command center. We'd set up discreet surveillance, old-school tactics from our Delta days, nothing flashy that could tip our hand. The feeds confirmed what I'd suspected. Maria had accessed my locked safe 3 times while I was deployed, rifling through those coded mission journals I'd kept as per protocol. Each time the footage hit me like a fresh wound, her hands on secrets that weren't hers to touch, potentially feeding Braden's treason. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a breach that echoed the family values I'd brought from Mexico, where trust was sacred. But emotion aside, this was intel gold, strengthening our strategic position for the fallout. The military tribunal convened behind closed doors at Fort Bragg, and I observed from an adjacent room through one-way glass my dress uniform heavy with medals that now felt like anchors. Braden sat there no longer the arrogant interloper, but a broken man facing life behind bars for espionage. The evidence was ironclad, classified docs on his device's offshore accounts traced to foreign handlers, encrypted comms spanning 3 countries. He cracked under pressure, accepting a plea, 25 years in federal prison, no parole. Maria endured extensive questioning, her world crumbling as agents probed her role. Ultimately, she was cleared of deliberate involvement, no proof she knew the full extent, but the damage was done. In our tight-knit military community, whispers turned to outright shunning. Wives who'd been her friends now avoided her gaze. Even her own parents, staunch Americans, who'd once tolerated our mixed heritage, cut financial ties after learning the truth, leaving her isolated and adrift. As I absorbed the tribunal's grim theater, my phone rang. Colonel Wright, his voice clipped with efficiency. "It's done, Mendoza. Mercer's network is dismantled. We identified 4 more contractors and 2 foreign agents stateside. Your leads from that old Delta network were crucial, saved lives, exposed the rot." I hung up, a mix of vindication and hollow ache settling in my chest. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse, early, the weight of the previous day's revelations still pressing on my shoulders like an overloaded rucksack from my Delta days. Raul had texted me updates overnight. The investigation's ripples were spreading, but my focus was laser sharp on Carlos. As I stepped into the lobby, there she was, Maria, waiting alone outside the courtroom. She'd lost weight, her once vibrant eyes shadowed with dark circles, her clothes plain and rumpled, no trace of the luxury she'd flaunted. At 55, she looked older, broken, and for a split second, pity flickered in my chest. But strategy demanded clarity. This was the enemy who'd breached our lines. "Luis," she said, stepping toward me, her voice cracking like fragile ice. "Can we talk before we go in?" I stopped maintaining distance, my senses picking up her desperation, the tremor in her hands, the plea in her gaze. "What's left to say?" "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered, tears welling. "I didn't know about Braden's dealings. I was lonely, scared you'd never retire fully at your age, that we'd grow old apart. Please, can we try again for Carlos, for us, in our later years?" Memories flooded me. The young woman who'd embraced my Mexican heritage, stood by during Gulf War absences, raised Carlos with stories of familia and honor, while I fought shadows abroad. But then her words echoed, "I've met someone better," and the pain hardened into resolve. This wasn't just personal, it was a strategic line I couldn't cross. "No, Maria, we can't. You didn't just betray me," I added, my voice cold as a night op. "You betrayed everything I stand for, the oaths, the sacrifices. Carlos deserves better." She pleaded. "He needs both parents, especially now with college ahead." "He'll have both," I said flatly, "just not under the same roof." Inside the courtroom, Judge Sampson, replacing the recused Watkins, reviewed the updated filings with a grave nod. Maria's high-powered lawyer had bailed, leaving her with a harried public defender. Garner presented our case methodically, highlighting the espionage fallout. "Given the extraordinary circumstances," Sampson announced, "I've scrutinized this closely. Mrs. Mendoza, while cleared criminally, your judgment exposed your son to a convicted traitor. Mr. Mendoza's exemplary service record, over 40 years including Delta Force, speaks to his character and dedication. He's arranged stable support for Carlos's future, focusing on education and heritage." Maria gasped as the gavel fell. "Primary guardianship to Luis Mendoza, with Mrs. Mendoza receiving supervised visitation until revisited. Emphasis on Carlos's transitional needs, college prep, emotional stability." Tears streamed down her face. "You can't—" "Do not interrupt," Sampson warned. Afterward, I walked to my truck, the victory tasting bittersweet, like ashes from a long-fought battle. I'd secured a new house near my parents' abuelos, with deep Mexican roots, to provide Carlos the familia anchor he needed. 3 months later, with my back finally healed enough to move without that constant reminder of vulnerability, I stepped back into the fray. not as a frontline operator, but as a special advisor for a classified mission in Eastern Europe. At 62, they called me in because no one else understood the network like I did the same web of shadows Braden had tangled himself in. My parents, those steadfast pillars of Mexican heritage, moved into the guest house to watch over Carlos, teaching him the old ways, recipes from abuela's stories of resilience, the unbreakable bond of familia. It was a strategic handover ensuring his stability while I pursued the final strike against the betrayal that had nearly cost us everything. Maria filed an appeal clawing for another chance at guardianship, but Judge Sampson shut it down cold. My mission's ties to national security trumped her claims. Ironic justice, her choices now buried under the weight of my duty. She texted threats from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've ruined me. I'll get Carlos back." The words stung like echoes of old battles, but I deleted them without reply, forwarding to Rule. He handled the rest, informing her that visitations were suspended under the amended order. Actions had consequences. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. 6 months in the shadows of Eastern Europe sharpened me further, gathering intel, coordinating takedowns that dismantled the entire spy ring. I returned with commendations, the ghosts of fallen teammates finally at rest. The mission wasn't just vengeance. It was closure, a symbolic torch passed from my scarred hands to a safer world. On Carlos's 18th birthday, we hosted a gathering at the new house, friends from school, military families, the air filled with laughter and the scent of homemade tamales, symbols of the freedom we'd reclaimed. Maria arrived for her supervised slot bearing modest gifts, her presence awkward and diminished. She caught my eye, pleading silently for forgiveness for some crack in my resolve. I turned away, joining Carlos by the grill where he grilled me on college plans, his future bright and unburdened. In that moment, reflecting on the ruins of what was, I felt true liberation, not just from her chains, but from the weight of unearned trust. I'd taught him the core of our Mexican military ethos, loyalty above all, betrayal's price eternal. Some wounds scarred over forging strength, some bridges burned to light the path ahead. This journey from ambush to triumph reminded me, and hopefully you, that true freedom blooms from honoring your values even when the battle rages at home. Stand firm, protect what's yours, and emerge stronger. If this story of resilience and revenge inspired you, smash that like button right now and subscribe for more tales of sweet justice. Drop a comment below, sharing your thoughts. What would you do in my shoes? Or tell us your own story of overcoming betrayal. Let's build a community of warriors here. And don't forget, click the video on screen for the next epic revenge saga. Your next dose of empowerment awaits.